Hi everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I am currently in the middle of filming a Dyepot Weekly celebratory episode because we have hit the birthday of Dyepot Weekly. And in that video, I decided to speckle some sock yarn and some 100% wool yarn with some jacquard acid dyes. And I am really excited by the results and how that is going. But the dye containers I had were too small, so I couldn't reach my hands inside of them, which means that I have a lot of dye left over because I took the dye powder and put it inside some cups. So I just took a skein of Knit Picks Hawthorne sock yarn, and it was not pre-soaked, and just put it into the leftover water. And we are going to add some of this color and see what we get. Now, our dye pot is not very hot yet. I would say it's just warm. And the heat is still off. So, I'm sort of making this up as I go. But I thought that we'd take some of this powder and add it on. I have this water started off as 8 cups of water with 4 tablespoons of vinegar. So there is a lot of acid present. But I sort of wanted to, oh, and I guess this is the violet, add some of the color onto the yarn, but do it sort of on top of the water. I'm curious to see the spread. The water level was lower previously, and poking that down a little bit. So I'm curious if we're going to get penetration all the way through, or how this will really work. But I'm sort of adding like this speckling almost just on the surface of the water. So you can see that we're getting this spread, and a little less so on this side. So I'm sort of poking it down a bit. Ooh, that's fun. Getting some speckles through there. I'm not expecting it to spread like super far or anything like that, but I mean, over here we might get just some legit type speckles. Ooh, I think this is looking really cool. I'm going to start turning on the heat. Make sure everything is lit. And here is our black. And I'm sort of going through the same process. But whoa, that is blooming! Sort of adding it to the surface of the water to just sort of see how those colors will spread. And over here at this end, I'm also being a little more speckly, but you can see when that black hits the water, it goes whoosh and sort of spreads really fairly far. Good. So where there's more like speckles, those aren't, those, I don't know, I've still got some color left. I think that I might need to flip this in a little bit, but for now, I think we're getting something rather fun. I think we'll have some speckles, but we'll also have some bigger spread patches. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited about that. So I am going to go ahead and sort of let this cook for, I think, 5 minutes or so, and I'm going to go wash my hand off. As we wait on the timer, sort of wanted to give a little view, close-up of what this yarn is looking like. I have my dedicated dye spoon not present with me at the moment, but since there's only 100 grams of yarn in my pot, I can see through to the bottom and I can see that the dye has mostly absorbed. In particular, you know, I'm looking through these darkest patches. And what's fun is this spread. Like, I can see there might still be a little powder on top of here. I think that there might still be a little bit of powder, yep, right there, and a little bit right here, which will give some additional color, so I'll just let that dissolve. But I see this like dark black stretch where I added the black. So yeah, there's a tiny bit more purple that is coming on. I'm going to increase the temperature again. But I think a lot of the color has definitely absorbed. The place where I am most sort of concerned and questioning are on these edges. And so I think I'm going to go ahead and give this just another 5 minutes, but then I'll come back and flip it. And then we'll see if I want to add a little more dye to the two ends. Alright, let's flip this over. I sort of wish I used one of those cable ties, but most of that color is in the yarn. But let's flip over these more speckled areas to see how they're doing. I'm actually seeing speckles on this side, and where does that yarn go? I'm seeing some white over there, but interesting. Okay. It's looking like we got some really, really good color penetration. I do think I might want to add a little bit more speckles onto this other side, but just a hint. Just a tiny amount. I don't want to overdo it. I'm probably gonna overdo it. Trying to take just a little bit, and I'm like pinching it in between my fingers and just letting the tiniest amount of black kind of come out. There's some of that blue again, and uh-oh, I lost some. That is okay. Yeah, I think for the speckles, you really want it to be warm, but not quite in solution. Okay. I think we're good. I have not used up all the dye, but I pretty much am done with this. I am going to, once again, turn up the heat for a little bit, but I'm going to let this go for 5 minutes as before, and I'm going to come back and we'll probably remove it and then figure out something else with this last bit of dye. I love this yarn, and just sort of like making duly sure I don't see any like little bleedettes happening. Oh, we've got speckles. We've got sort of a soft gray throughout from the little bit of bleeding, which I love. This is beautiful. Okay. I'm going to set this aside to cool, but we still have some more leftover dye. So I think, yeah, I kind of want to see how much this will spread. So I think I'm going to add some more water, maybe a little more vinegar, and let's have some fun. Here are 8 more cups of water. Let's just go ahead and do 2 more tablespoons of vinegar. Yeah, approximately. it's less acidic than it was before, but that is all right. I've got here, I know that now it's warm, but I just turned the heat up a bit, but it's not hot yet because I just added cool water. I have here some 100% wool of the Andes worsted weight yarn that is dry. I have not pre-soaked it. I'm sort of soaking it now as we are putting this in. Hoping to remove as many bubbles as I can before I sort of become that frog that doesn't know it's getting boiled. I do not recommend putting your hands directly in a pan like this. But, okay. There's still some dry patches, but I am really okay with that. We've got more water. We're slowly heating up, but it is fairly warm already. I am masked up, I'm gloved up, putting dye in my hands. There's some dye in the cup, but sort of going across, and I like seeing these like riverlets of color, and seeing like how it sort of spreads. Trying to make sure I get down to the edge. All right, that is one side. Here's the violet side. Just trying to spread this out a bit. On top, I expect that this will sort of like spread, and boy, look at my hands. So now I'm taking these cups and my hands a bit. I'm just sort of collecting this residual color. I don't like to leave dye behind. This is a no dye left behind type celebration. But I'm sort of like, well, that's a reasonable amount of color. Adding some of this purple. I think there's a little more too. There. Purple. I think this one is also a little purplish. Sort of like a cross section between the two. All right. You know, there's definitely a little dye that got wasted, but I would say just about all of that dye that I have left over is almost all on this yarn, which has not started bubbling yet, but you can kind of tell that we are going to get something a little mottled. And in fact, I think I'm coming in to like poke and shimmy, because some color is definitely absorbed and it's going to be sort of like mottlied, but you know, this is, I'm just playing around and I'm assuming that we're going to get some good color penetration towards the bottom, but the shimmy is just to sort of, I don't really mind if there's any white patches, but just to try to keep things from like sticking out. And oh, I think this is going to be awesome. Awesome. All right, I will come back in 5 minutes and we'll take another look. I can tell looking through that most of the color has in fact absorbed. What's fun is I am seeing some of those yellow patches from the black, which honestly are just sort of amusing to me. But right now I am going to turn off the heat. And I'm leaving this in the pot in part because the places where I usually place yarn are full, but also I do see that there's some more color around the outside edge, and leaving the yarn in the pot to cool will help let those colors absorb. I am now going to remove this yarn from the dye bath, and we got a really beautiful saturation of color through the entire skein without needing to flip it over. So I'm gonna let this finish cooling so we can wash it. Let's wash our pretty speckly and colorful yarn. And all of that dye, my friends, is in our stunning yarn. I mean, is it really fair to call this leftover dye when really it's just dry dye powder? But it is leftover from a project. This is not the project I planned, and yet I got something stunning, and you can bet that I will try to repeat this kind of yarn in the future. Okay, with some soap I am now seeing a little bit of bleeding. A little bit of like a gray that might be coming from some of the blacks or something. Let's see. Bare hint of color. So I'm going to keep rinsing so the water runs clear. Hang this up to dry, and then we will wash our next yarn. Let's wash our yarn and see what we can see. We've got a beautiful sort of variegated tonal yarn here. And this was done with dry powder. I did not pre-mix the colors, which is I think what gives us some of this uneven quality to it. But I like the uneven quality to it. That's sort of my kind of aesthetic. It's something that I really enjoy in hand-dyed yarn. I'm going to use a little bit of dish soap. We'll see if any colors come out. But the dye bath is completely clear, so I'm not expecting to see anything. And now I'll rinse out the soap and hang up the yarn to dry. A little bit of dry powder can go a long way. We didn't have very much left, but we got two really stunning colorways using this leftover dye. I love that adding a little more of the powder gives you some nice spread and color penetration. If I flip it over, you know, those colors went all the way through. Granted, there was only one skein of yarn in my steam pan at a time, which allowed that dye to go through a little further, but I'm still really excited about that. And in some areas where the yarn was closer to the surface, we were still able to get some really sharp speckles as well. And so this is just a great one pan, really, I mean, I guess I technically added some more after the flip, but really one step dye process. And it absolutely looks like I did many layers of dyeing versus sort of doing it all in one go. The Wool of the Andes, I have something that's a lot more of a repeating colorway, but it's mottled. It feels sort of kettle dyed. And honestly, looking at it, almost feels like it had a bare yarn base. Once again, we got really good depth of coverage just from sprinkling in the dye and sort of in the hot pan, mixing it up a little bit so we could get the coverage on the yarn. And I'm really excited with how it turned out. I think that if I were hand painting, it wouldn't necessarily feel so soft. I think some of the differences might feel a little harsher. And I don't know, I absolutely love using the steam pan on 2 burners and playing with dry acid dye powders. If you would like to learn more about some of the items that I used in this video, from my steam pan to the Knit Picks Hawthorne and Wool of the Andes yarn bases, you can find some affiliate links in the video description. I absolutely love mixing purple with black, and this project is really no exception. I am absolutely in love with these colorways, and I'm also really excited that I didn't need to mix the dye and try to dissolve it in advance to achieve these looks. I honestly can't wait to play around with this more in the future. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel. I release at least 2 new yarn dyeing videos every week, and I also frequently like to do special weeks, whether it's a week of sock blanks, dyeing cotton yarns, or celebration of other holidays. Thank you so much for watching.